All right, let's get into our first topic. The indictment of former President Donald Trump by a Manhattan grand jury represents the left's efforts, literally, to weaponize government power against their opponents. Look, we've seen this in the past. We saw it when the FBI targeted parents at school board meetings. We have seen it as pro-life individuals have been attacked. And now the former president himself is the target. And no coincidence, he's the leading contender for the 2024 GOP presidential nomination. So Republican members of Congress obviously are expressing outrage since the indictment took place yesterday evening. But is there anything they can do about it? Well, joining me now to discuss this and more is U.S. Representative Andy Biggs. He's a member of the House Judiciary Committee. He represents the 5th District in Arizona. Congressman Biggs, great to see you again. Welcome back to Washington Watch.
Jody, it's always good to be with you. We miss you in Washington, D.C., but you're in a happier place, I can tell you.
Well, listen, we're all in this thing together. In fact, all of our viewers and listeners right now, we are all in this thing together. But let me jump into this with you, Andy. It's obvious that this was clearly the indictment, a politically motivated action. But beyond being politically involved, is this also election interference, do you think?
Well, yeah, Jody, certainly they've weaponized even a borough district attorney's office in New York City. But it's also, part of it is exactly election interference. Part of it is just the weaponization and the attack of the left from every institution in America to change who we are as Americans. They don't like America. They don't like who we are. But when you bring up the question of election interference, I agree with you. And why is it? It's because they would like to find some way to diminish the odds that President Trump will become the Republican primary winner and then go on to be our nominee in the general election. So this is to muddy that up. And they're using an incredibly weak case to do that.
Yeah, and I think it's actually going to backfire on them. There's the buzz I'm hearing, and I don't know if what you are, but people are angry about this, perhaps even people who otherwise would not necessarily be assured votes for President Trump. But let me ask you this. What do we know about this Manhattan District Attorney, Alvin Bragg? A lot of folks are pointing to the hypocrisy that he is one soft on crime and all this type of stuff. And then, of course, we have the fact that we didn't see any movement going after Hillary Clinton and all the multiple issues she was involved with that clearly could pass legal lines. In fact, here's a remark from one of your colleagues, Matt Gaetz, just yesterday. I want you to hear this and get your thoughts.
I remember my Democrat colleagues in Congress just crowing to high heaven about the unfairness of Comey making derogatory comments about Hillary Clinton before the 2016 election. This must ring 1,000 times louder to all of them. It is clear election interference, and I believe there are federal equities at play that the United States Congress ought to evaluate.
Well, he just drew the line in the sand. So he says this is election interference, and you did too. So what happens, Congressman? Should Congress investigate this?
Yeah, absolutely. And let me tell you, there are federal issues at play, just as Representative Gaetz said. And the way to think of it is this. In order to bootstrap this to a felony, which is what he is trying to do, I'm speaking here, District Attorney Bragg, for him to do that, he has to invoke violations of federal law because the underlying offenses are, number one, they're misdemeanors. Number two, they're 5 years past the statute of limitations. So under New York law, you have to, if you can link it to a commission of another crime, then you can rehabilitate it. But you can't, you still have a statute of limitations problem. So in order to get a felony, he's alleging federal violations of election law. Now, what does that do? It allows us, we now have, I think, a jurisdiction. But beyond that, that's one. The other jurisdictional area that we have to investigate and bring Bragg before us is if there is due process that's being violated, We have an opportunity to oversee that. Number three, if there is any federal dollars going into New York City related to this, and in fact in New York State, I would suggest that we have an opportunity to withdraw those dollars, number one, and number two, use those as a predicate to actually continue this investigation that we need to have now into the DA's office and the abuse of process and prosecutorial power.
Well, those are some excellent points. So you anticipate an investigation, it sounds like it's going to be forthcoming.
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, Chairman Jordan and Chairman Comer wrote a letter to Bragg asking him to come and testify, and he just said, "Forget it. I'm not going to come." That's what happens whenever the left is in power. When Trump was in power, his people came to testify, and you remember how they viciously attacked them. People like Bill Barr, who was then Attorney General. But we've got to get these guys in before us. And we also have to determine, is there additional remedial action that the federal government can take when you abuse your prosecutorial power?
Well, we're really grateful there are people like you, Representative Biggs, who are there, and I know you've got a significant number of others who are fighting this type of battle. One of the other issues that comes out in all of this to me that is extremely disturbing is the obvious pattern that is being not just done behind our backs, but coming out open. This two-tiered system of justice, is that a concern among other members on Capitol Hill?
Oh, my goodness, yes. Yeah, we've been talking about two-tiered system when we had a representative from Georgia named Jody Heiss in Congress. He'll remember that we talked about that often because it is a two-tiered system. So you've got, is anybody going to be arrested and charged and prosecuted in that Tennessee insurrection down there? And I use that term glibly because that's what Democrats use whenever there's a riot that they don't like. You see what happens with BLM and Antifa rioters. They don't get charged. If they're charged, it's a misdemeanor. If it does become a felony, they're getting time served and out they go. This happens over and over again. I mean, how about the guy, Matt Taibbi, who's a Democrat liberal journalist? The day he's testifying before the committee in Congress, and he's talking about the weaponization of the federal government, the IRS shows up at his house, Jody, and get this, it isn't because he owed money or they had any reason to be there. The IRS actually owes Taibbi money, but they wanted to intimidate, and that's part of the evil that's going on in Washington, D.C. today with the federal government, whether it's ATF, FBI, DOJ, EPA, any of the alphabet soups. They're all weaponized against Americans. And this thing with Bragg is the tip.
Congressman, we're going to have to leave it there.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Congressman Andy Biggs, for joining us. God bless you. Keep the torch ablaze.